And with that, we are going to move to our next speaker, Coach Jasmin. I am so happy to have you here and welcome. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and give you the stage. Welcome, Jasmin.
All right. Thank you, Haley, for having me. I've seen a lot of great things in this group, and I'm happy to be part of it and get a chance to talk to you today. So, just a little bit about information. So, my original career was as a dentist, and I was so fascinated by the power of the mind that I went into and became a master practitioner of hypnotherapy, NLP, and mental emotional release because I really wanted to learn more about how we can change things in terms of using the power of our mind in accomplishing goals. And so, what I want to talk to you guys about today is talking about mental blocks, also known as limiting beliefs, subconscious beliefs, or programming, right? These are all just different names for really the same thing. And I want to talk about the effect they can have in our lives. And, at the end, talk a little bit about what you can do to start changing that. So, some of you guys might know about the subconscious mind, but I'm just going to give a very basic overview, okay? So, I want you to think of the subconscious mind as this huge memory bank that stores everything, like everything. And I mean everything that happened to you when you're 1 month old, when you were in the womb. There are even studies out right now that talk about trauma energy getting passed down generations. So there are things that can affect your subconscious mind even further back than your lifetime. And the subconscious mind makes everything you say and do fit a pattern, which we will call your master program. And the bulk of that master program gets created in childhood. Specifically, ages 0 to 7 are huge for the subconscious mind. So think of yourself as this blank slate, and where you're pretty empty, and that's the main time where you get filled up with these beliefs and that programming. And that's why those years are so important, because as adults, most of us are not connected to our subconscious mind and the programming that we picked up in childhood. And so we might see our life going a certain way, but we don't know why. And, we might blame it on circumstances. But I want you to consider that the subconscious mind is involved in terms of, if there's certain goals that you haven't been able to accomplish. And just as a side note, in terms of how powerful the subconscious mind is, your subconscious mind can process 11 million bits of information per second, whereas your conscious mind can only process about 40 to 50 bits of information per second. So that's a huge difference. According to this, the subconscious mind is 275,000 times more powerful, and some experts say the difference is even greater. And so some of this information might seem pretty abstract. You might think, okay, great, the subconscious mind is powerful, awesome, but what does that mean for my life? And so if it's okay, I want to give you guys some examples, client stories, and, just things that I've seen in terms of how it affects you. So let's say that you were a kid and, you were sitting on the sidelines and people were getting picked to be parts of the sports team and you didn't get picked. And you made it mean right then and there that you're just not wanted. And then that belief becomes part of your subconscious programming and plays out for the rest of your life, including adulthood. So specifically, I know someone with that belief, and even in his marriage, it kept showing up. And until he got control of that programming, he wouldn't have been able to save his marriage. Or let's say, I had another client that got an A, first grade, he got an A, and he was really proud, and he ran home and he showed mom, and he said, look, mom, I got an A. And mom looks at the paper and she says, why not an A plus? And why can't you be more like your cousin? He's so social, etc. And so he developed the belief that he's just not good enough. And so for him, he really tried to push himself hard, trying to prove to his mom that he is good enough. And in terms of his career, he was quite successful. But where this good enough really showed up was in his relationships. Here you had this man who was attractive. He had a great personality, great career, great life in terms of material things, etc. and he wasn't able to be in a relationship with high caliber people. Instead, he would end up dating people that were on drugs or were serial cheaters. And it got to the point where he said, my friends are starting to disrespect me based on the people that I'm dating. But he said, I don't know what I'm doing. I keep attracting these type of partners. And, what was really underneath that was a belief of not good enough. He didn't feel that he was good enough for someone awesome. And so the programming is really powerful, and it will prove itself right to you all the time. One of the most in your face examples that I came across was a prospective client. So she called me, and her complaint was that everyone is so harsh to her and mistreats her. She talked about how she did everything for her kids, and yet they mistreated her. Other family members, how they treated her, things at work, etc. And so, I started noticing some of her programming the more we were talking. And as our communication continued, even on text later on, I noticed she was becoming more and more harsh with me. And I was aware of her programming. And so I didn't react in a harsh way, right? I knew it was her programming, so I didn't let it get to me. But it almost seemed to bother her. And what I mean is that when your subconscious belief is that people are harsh to you, even if someone isn't being harsh to you, you will create the kind of communication or take certain actions that can bring about a harsh result. Or you may be drawn automatically to people who may be more mean or harsh. That's part of your comfort zone. That's part of your subconscious programming. Might sound kind of weird, but that's what the subconscious mind does. And so if we think about it, our beliefs, our subconscious beliefs give us our choices, and then our choices give us our actions, and that in turn gives us our results. And so if you want to manifest a goal into reality, your subconscious mind has to be aligned with it. You might have a business goal and you're so frustrated because things haven't been working for years. And, for some, that might have them feel resentful or jealous, or, for others, it might have them feel like a failure. But again, I want you to consider the subconscious mind is at play. And so if there's a goal that you've been trying to accomplish, or an area of your life that's not working for you, there is something on a subconscious level that is stopping you from making that goal a reality. So I hope some of the examples I gave you some insight in terms of the subconscious programming from childhood and how it can affect you for the rest of your life. And in order for you to grow, to reach your goal, you often have to get out of your comfort zone, get out of that programming. You have to be willing to kind of get uncomfortable, feel awkward, doing new things for the first few times. So you might be aware that you tried something new and after only a few short weeks, you gave up. The gym, for example, is a great example. If you don't have the neural programming, if you don't have on a subconscious level that programming that going to the gym is an automatic, natural thing, and for most of your life you haven't been going and suddenly you want to go, your subconscious mind will try to pull you back into your comfort zone. Because each time when you try something new, you're outside of that comfort zone. It doesn't fit that master programming that guides the subconscious mind. Another example is New Year's resolutions. So only about 16% of people follow through with their New Year's resolution. Really small percentage, right? They're all pumped up beginning of the year. I'm going to make this change. This year's going to be different. But it's outside of what they've been able to accomplish before. It's out of their comfort zone. And so many by February have given up. So, in terms of the subconscious, I'm just going to give you more examples. And the reason I like to give examples is because I want you to see if you hear something for yourself. Now, I was working with someone who wanted to lose some weight. And as I started working with her and we went deeper, I became aware that she had a fear of being too attractive. And when we looked deeper, that fear came about as the child from her mom, who had something about you got to be always careful around men and don't be too attractive or bad things can happen to you. And so that subconscious block was preventing her from reaching her weight loss goal. Okay. Or another example in terms of relationships is, one of my first clients that I ever worked with, she came to me and her complaint was that she's not successful in relationships, and what she really wanted to is to be married. And when I started talking to her in terms of her history of relationships, what's been happening, she told me that it's been pointed out to her that she has a pattern of dating jerks. And, she tries to stay in the relationship for some time. And actually, with the jerks, it seems like it lasted, generally speaking, a few years. She really tried to make it work. And then it would usually get to the point where it get pretty bad. It would, the abuse would be too much or the mistreatment would be too much, and she would eventually leave. And once in a while, she would date a quote unquote nice guy, but that relationship would never last long. And she was never really clear why it ended. She would just really be upset because she wasn't fulfilling on this goal of happily being married. And so when we dove deeper, what was uncovered was that as a child, based on how she grew up and based on how she was treated, she felt really unlovable. And so that programming from childhood, again, played out in adulthood. So when she was dating the jerk, for example, it completely agreed with the programming of that she's unlovable because look how badly he's treating her. Of course you're unlovable. But if she was dating the nice guy, it would conflict with that programming. And so she was sabotaging the relationship because all of a sudden, here's someone being lovable to her, treating her well, and it didn't sit well with her on a subconscious level. And so, not even being aware of it, she would sabotage the relationship. And at first, when we started working together, she said, I can't even see what I'm doing. What are you talking about? How am I sabotaging this? But later on, things became clear in terms of what she was doing that eventually had even, the nice guys that she was dating quit on her. And so, again, the subconscious mind is really powerful. And once you change that programming, things changed. So she, for example, is happily married now, and it has been so for a few years. So, the subconscious blocks, if you have them, they can make a big difference. And, for many of you, also notice in terms of your clients, what are some of their blocks and how does that show up? And like I said, many of us, we don't really remember what they are. A lot of these things happen so early on. And ideally, you want to get to the root cause because it really helps you connect when you understand, okay, so let me get this straight. When I was 7 years old and I was sitting on the sidelines and I didn't get picked for that sport, I made that mean that I'm not wanted. And as an adult looking back, that might seem kind of trivial. But as a kid, when you weren't being picked for a team and you see everybody else being picked, you're going to make that mean something really big. That's huge, right? And so it helps to then connect the dots and be like, oh, I made that mean this, but really it doesn't really mean anything about me. I've worked with so many clients, it doesn't matter if they're attractive or super successful and talented, etc. They still have subconscious blocks, like deep beliefs that go against them, whether it's not good enough or not lovable, etc. And then those beliefs, they play out and they show up in their lives. And also, I want to point out that the subconscious mind isn't evil. I have an example in terms of money, in terms of a client. So there, she had this business and she had a regular stream of clients. She was very good at what she did. And yet every few months she was struggling for money and had to ask others for financial help. And if you're looking into that, it just didn't make sense. She was good at what she did. She regularly had clients. She wasn't a crazy spender. What was going on? Why was she always in need of money every few months? And so when I started working with her, we started to uncover that when she was a kid, she lived in a small town and her family was very well known for their wealth. And kids, out of jealousy, would be really mean to her. And so as a child, she developed the programming or the belief on a subconscious level that money is bad. When you have a lot of money, people are mean to you. And it was that block that prevented her from succeeding in terms of her business consistently. And so again, once that programming got changed, her business really took off. But that programming had her so stuck in that conversation that money is evil and people are going to mistreat me if I do well financially. And again, she wasn't even aware of it consciously. You would think, well, she went through that as a child. It was a major thing. It wasn't just one thing. It, happened throughout her childhood. But still, she didn't really connect the dots, right? And nothing against her. Most of us, until we really start to think, we don't really connect the dots, how that shows up for us in adulthood. And so your subconscious mind is running our lives. And yet most of us, like I said, we're not connected to it, especially as adults. And it's said that the subconscious mind runs up to 98% of our lives. And it's crazy that it's so powerful, yet most of us aren't connected to it, right? And so I want you to think about some goals that you've had in your life and your results. And again, if you haven't gotten the results that you set out to create, it's likely because your subconscious mind is not aligned with your goal. Carl Jung, one of the most famous psychiatrists, he has this quote and he says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And what he meant by that is that unless you're aware of your unconscious programming, you will just be like, well, this is the hand I was dealt with. Similar to that woman that I was talking to that was complaining that everyone is so harsh to me. That's what she said to me. She said, I feel like this is the hand I was dealt with. She wasn't aware of her unconscious programming or her subconscious programming, and so it was running her life. But once you become aware of those programs, it no longer has you because you're on top of it. You can control it. And so the beautiful thing is that you can shift subconscious programming. It doesn't mean that for the rest of your life, things are going to be messed up. You can really shift things. And so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit in terms of that, in terms of changing programming. Because if you want to transform your results permanently and exponentially, then you need to transform something in your inner world. You cannot ignore your subconscious mind. You need to do it on a subconscious level. And so, there are things like hypnotherapy and NLP that, obviously are helpful. But what I recommend to start out also is to really start thinking about what beliefs show up. If you think about a goal that would really light you up, and I want you to come from nothing. And what I mean when I say come from nothing, it means you leave behind past experiences, all your doubts, just come from nothing. What is it that you really want? What's so important to you that would really light you up? And as you think about that, notice what limiting conversations come up. Maybe it's something like, I can't do it. It never happens for me. Things don't work out, etc. Start noticing that, because that's an indicator of what's happening on a subconscious level. Okay. And then some people, they've done some work and they're aware, they're like, yeah, I really know I have this thing about not good enough. A lot of people have that, unfortunately, right? Not good enough is a very common subconscious belief. And so if you, for example, are aware of that you have this not good enough, what you can do is a 3-step process. So when that thought comes up, you got to catch yourself. Most of us, we've become so numb to what we think, but you got to start becoming aware and catching that thought as fast as possible. You want to catch it ideally within the first 10 seconds. So then, for example, you catch that thought, you're about to embark on something new, and you catch that thought and you're like, yeah, I'm not good enough, and you catch it. So that's step 1, you caught it. Okay, good. Then step 2 is you accept it. What do I mean by that? Well, you accept it's just programming. It's nothing intrinsic about you. It doesn't mean you're not beautiful enough, not smart enough, etc. It's just programming. The not good enough is just programming. And you're like, yeah, I accept that's just programming. And then you create beyond. And what I mean with that is that when you have a goal, you got to take actions to move the needle forward. But when we have those subconscious blocks, like, for example, not good enough, some people, what they might do is they get in inaction, or they kind of shrink or hide out. And so when you notice your programming, you want to create beyond. You want to take a different action step. And when you notice that it's just your programming and you accept that's just your programming, you then take a step further ahead and you actually take an action differently than you usually would, something that actually moves the needle forward. So those are some tips. I'm going to stop here, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this.
All right.
I love this information. Can you share your contact information, please? How would somebody get in touch with you?
Yeah, I will type my website right here. And here is also my business phone number. And there is also a link to a free intake session if someone wanted that. I'll get that to you.
Okay, let me post those real quick.
Do you have the link for the session?
I do not off the top of my tip of my fingertips.
Okay, I have it right here.
And that is the link to your website. And this other link that I'm getting ready to post in the comments is a link to a session, right?
Yes, it should be a link to a free intake session. Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Haley.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time today.